Well, two veterans of the Canberra Press Gallery who've been watching the past few days' events with increasing amazement are Dennis Shanahan, the political editor of the Australian newspaper, and Peter Hartcher, political editor of the Sydney Morning Herald. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks,
Good evening.
Malcolm Turnbull's demeanour in his press conference was very forceful and authoritative, particularly for somebody who's presiding over a party meltdown. Dennis Shanahan, did you expect Malcolm Turnbull to come out so defiantly?
No, and with Malcolm Turnbull, it's often the least predictable thing that he actually does. He gave a very good performance, but it was designed to put the last-ditch argument on an ETS and to ensure that his critics, if they do succeed, will be left with a very difficult legacy to get around.
So do you think that the way he's come out tonight means that we won't see him resign any time over the next few days, or is that still on the table?
I think that the possibility of resignation from Malcolm Turnbull is very high, and I think that even if he doesn't resign, we'll sort of almost certainly be facing a leadership ballot on Monday or Tuesday.
Peter Hartcher, what do you think?
Well, I think that Malcolm Turnbull turned this into a leadership issue himself a few weeks ago when he got back from his inspirational tour of the British Conservative Party. He's been consistent on that. I think he's just decided that he knows that his leadership is in extreme straits. He's decided to martyr himself for a cause rather than just die a death.
His strategy is obviously to fight. Is there any prospect that that could actually work for him, Peter Hartcher?
Well, it's not enough, even presuming that the Turnbull forces can, in their new league with the Rudd government, get the ETS through the Parliament. That's not going to be enough to save Malcolm Turnbull's leadership. Malcolm Turnbull has been in the killing zone for political leaders ever since the Godwin-Gretsch affair. The only reason he hasn't been challenged and replaced already is that the party has lacked one essential precondition for a change, and that's a candidate. Well, today we got the candidate. His name is Tony Abbott. However, Turnbull does have a reasonably good option, a reasonably good chance of salvaging the ETS, and therefore his political death won't have been for nothing.
Dennis Shanahan, we just heard Cory Bernardi's position. If you listen to the language that Malcolm Turnbull used in that press conference about needing to take action, protecting the planet for our children and our grandchildren, it almost sounded like something that you'd hear Kevin Rudd say. Do you think that that's likely to have played well at all to his party room?
Well, I know that it actually upset quite a few members of his party room. Obviously, they were critics of him, but they felt that, and this is part of the basic problem for Malcolm Turnbull on this whole issue. He has now been so strongly identified with the ETS that he is actually part of this scheme and cannot go to the next election criticising it. He'd have no credibility criticising it. He can't point out if there are job losses or price rises or complain about it, because it is his scheme as much as it is Kevin Rudd's, and that is what's upsetting a lot of his backbench.
We're hearing all the time, and we just heard from Cory Bernardi, this line that this isn't about the leadership, it's about the policy. Dennis Shanahan, why do you think that that is the line that coalition MPs are using?
Oh, well, look, it is in part about the policy. It's obviously also about the leadership. The people who are now setting out to bring down Malcolm Turnbull want to separate, even if it's only by a few hours or a couple of days, the actual explosion that we saw today, the calculated destruction of Malcolm Turnbull's leadership, with the leadership ballot, so that they can say, look, we've been, particularly Tony Abbott, say we have been faithful, we have actually stood by Malcolm Turnbull, although we didn't agree with the policy. The time has now come for us to vote against it, and then on Monday it's a new day, and that's when we get into the leadership ballot.
Peter Hartcher, yesterday Tony Abbott said he wouldn't challenge Malcolm Turnbull for the leadership. Something appears to have changed his mind. What do you think has swayed him?
Well, we have it on his own word that it was the reaction of the business community to the newly unveiled ETS scheme, Tony says, that swayed him, changed his mind. So on his own admission, this is not a matter of principle for him. This is an entirely opportunistic grab.
We haven't seen much of Joe Hockey in the past 24 hours. What's his position, Peter Hartcher?
I think Joe Hockey, as the sort of heir apparent, the go-to candidate, was hoping to sit and wait to allow Malcolm Turnbull to settle this particular dispute, to allow the party to enter the new year, and then, at a time of his own choosing and on his own terms, to think about taking the leadership. But I suspect he's now... we haven't seen much of him because he's living in fear that he's going to have to get involved in this fight. He doesn't want it. Why would you? The coalition's share of the vote is at rock bottom. The party's a mess. He would inherit this dreadful fight over the ETS against one of the most popular prime ministers we've seen in a generation.
And Dennis Shanahan, in a Abbott Hockey contest, who do you think would have the numbers?
Well, I think that, and I must say I did see Joe Hockey earlier and he was looking extremely distressed, but I think that there is an understanding that if Malcolm Turnbull doesn't stand or he resigns, Joe Hockey will be a candidate. If Malcolm Turnbull contests against Tony Abbott, Joe Hockey will not be a candidate. But I think that he is seen to be more popular, more saleable to the electorate than Tony Abbott. But the issue, of course, is that he is much closer to Malcolm Turnbull on the ETS. Tony Abbott is the Conservative candidate. And what we have to remember here is, what is the Liberal Party actually trying to achieve? They're actually trying to achieve to regain their lost rock bottom support. They're trying to get back to bedrock support. They're actually not trying at the next election to gain people who may have voted for Kevin Rudd at the last election. They're trying to get people they've lost since the election. They're now at 30% in Newspoll on primary vote. That's 4 percentage points down from the election. What the aim of the organisation of the Liberal Party is to get back to bedrock level. And that's where Tony Abbott may appeal to the faithful as the much more conservative and experienced candidate.
And Peter Hartcher, is that then why Cory Bernardi is saying that this ETS issue is a winner for them, because it appeals to their own base? It's not so much about the centre ground, as I was putting to him in that interview.
Well, I think there are three layers of contest going on here, and there are different weightings for different individuals. Partly this is a proxy fight over Malcolm Turnbull's leadership. Partly this is an argument about the ETS, and partly this is an ideological contest for some, but not all, of the members. That's the full suite of issues.
Do you think, Peter Hartcher, that if the coalition goes to an election where the ETS and climate change become a central issue, that is going to be good or bad for them? Well,
the ETS has majority support still. I saw a Morgan poll out, I think it was yesterday, suggesting that it's actually gone up in priority for Australian voters. The Rudd government would be positioned as the party of action on the ETS. Provided that Rudd can carry the argument and can carry the fight, it would be a plus for Rudd. Mind you, I think one of the reasons that Turnbull is in so much trouble is that Rudd has failed to carry the argument. For months he was happy to create a vacuum on the ETS, on climate change, so that all the attention in the media and political system would be on the infighting within the Liberal Party and to allow Malcolm Turnbull to be put on the political public rack. So I think we've seen a failure of leadership by Rudd in arguing the case and prosecuting the case and leading public opinion on this matter. So he would have to overcome that reluctance and really start to lead. But to answer your question, it would be a net benefit for Rudd and a net negative for the Liberals.
Dennis Shanahan, if we can just turn briefly to Labor's position while all of this is going on. Anthony Albanese has said that the Rudd government is insisting on a vote on this ETS legislation by 3:45 tomorrow. Is that possible, and how are we going to see things unfold tomorrow?
Well, it is possible, but it would suggest that the Labor Party would have to guillotine part of the debate, which is not going to be a good look. It it also misses out on what may be a plan B, which Malcolm Turnbull alluded to in his press conference, and that is that Nick Minchin may move a motion to defer until next week. And so it would be highly likely that the opposition numbers in the Senate, that is the Coalition, the Greens and the Independents, would actually vote to have more debate on the ETS rather than less. And then we shift it all then beyond the Liberal Party leadership ballot on Monday or Tuesday. And so the whole atmospherics could change in that simple deferral. That's why the government, and I've been speaking to some senior ministers this evening, are very nervous that the ETS may be knocked over. They actually considered putting the guillotine tonight and just slamming it through while there were still enough Liberal senators committed to passing it. Obviously, that was going to be a bad look. It would delegitimise the passage of the bill, and they decided against it. So, yes, it is possible to have a vote tomorrow afternoon, but I have a feeling that we may actually see alternative methods arrive.
Well, it'll be another interesting day, no doubt, and I'm sure you've both had an incredibly busy day, so thank you for coming in so late for us, Dennis Shanahan and Peter Hartcher.